Order. Board of Equalization meeting of Wednesday, April 24th. This is a continuation of our original Board of Equalization. Let the record show that we are missing one commissioner. That is Commissioner Trustham. We will reconvene and proceed to inquire if the clerk has a copy of the published notice of the meeting as published, and a copy of the notice should have become part of the minutes. This meeting has been published, so we will continue to the assessor's report, the level of assessment and report on the property.
Thank you, Mr. President, Commissioners. Being as we are still working on these, and there may be some adjustments, I didn't come forward with a final adjustment. But based off of the direction, we're looking at probably a $40 million decrease to overall commercial value. And so that will have a little bit of effect to the taxable value, but I don't have those final numbers for you at this time. In the nature of working with apartments and the income approach and all the approaches to value, I did put a little PowerPoint together for the people at home to try and simplify. I mean, it's a complex procedure, and it's not. There's some simple math that can go with it after all the complex data gathering and everything. So if you'd bear with me, we can walk through these 9 slides real quick. And just as a quick review, 3 approaches to value: cost approach, income approach, and the market approach. In calculating the income approach, our classroom instructors would say, don't forget your best friend, VER. And VER just stands for value, income, and rate. And the formula for determining value, and that's what we're here today, is to find out what value is. It's income divided by rate. And so Century Apartments has been before us. We'll be hearing some more about them again today. But just to simply walk through the approaches to value on this property, the gross income is reported to me was $785,000, just slightly over that, but we'll round down for the purpose of this. The expense ratio was calculated at 45% by Vanguard Appraisals. And so then our net income would be the gross income minus expenses, and expenses would be 45% of the $785,000, which would be $353,250, leaving net income of $431,750 for this property. And so then we take our cap rate, which is 6.5%, is returned by Vanguard Appraisals, and we divide the net income by the cap rate, and that returns an income by a value by the income approach using the cap rate of $6,600,000. You can also do an income approach by gross income multiplier. We've done that before. And you simply take gross income times the multiplier. In this case, the gross income again, $785,000. Our gross income multiplier is an 8 for this market, and we come up with the value of $6,280,000. So both on the income approach, both of them are relatively close together. But then we come up with our cost approach, and that's what our Camavision model is based off of, is a cost approach, and then we use the sales to set our depreciation. So with the 10% decrease that the board had asked for, and be a caveat to that, it actually ended up being 12.5%, and I can explain that as we get into more depth. But with that decrease for the larger number of units, we also, after the last board meeting, if I can back up, Mr. Ayler and I spent a significant amount of time after that meeting reviewing the properties that were here while he was here in town. And so he and we went through all of these together, and we looked at online maps and this and that of the properties in question. And he noticed with Century that one additional thing we could look at is there's a good chunk of the Century complex that is unbuildable land, kind of a playground area, or hasn't been built on. Just kind of land that's carrying a significant amount of value that's not doing a whole lot in regards to generating income. So we gave some obsolescence to that, as well as the decrease that the board had asked for us to return. And so if we leave Century Apartments in normal condition, the value came back at $6,089,000. We also worked that up as in below normal condition, and we'll show you here in a little bit why we did that. And the value in a below normal condition for that complex would be $5,706,000. So we go to the market approach to value, and you'll notice that we've still got the $6 million in normal, the $5,700,000 in below normal. And so on a per unit value, it comes out to $50,700 in normal condition, $47,500 in below normal. And our sales that we've had in the last couple of years have ranged between $30,000 and $50,000. And so then the question becomes, which one's more accurate? Is, you know, Century just a property that'll generate more income? As an outlier, as you know, it most certainly is, just because the uniqueness of being a 120 unit property that was built in the 80s. And so, you know, you can go with either one. It's going to be accurate. Is one more accurate than the other? Can be argued, but it comes down to, you know, reconciling. Are we going to place more weight on the income approach, or are we going to place more weight on the market approach? And that's just what we do here. So based on the cap rate, we return a value of $55,000 a unit using the gross income multiplier. Income return to value of $52,000. Then our cost normal, $50,000. Our cost below normal, $47,500. So, you know, good grouping there. Income being a little higher, that's not really surprising. And I think Mr. Royal's done a good job of explaining that, you know, 2013 was kind of the peak of income, where 2014 was sales. So income leads sales, the information does. If you're an appraiser or you're a purchaser, you're looking at the most recent year-end numbers for an apartment you're looking to buy. Well, if you're starting to lose tenants, that didn't show up in the year-end report. And so that inflates the market a little bit as compared to the income. Well, I think we're probably on the other end of that dip and heading back up. And so, you know, our sales are now lagging behind what the income's showing. And in reconciling this, I mean, you know, we've heard, oh, we got to go by the income. So that would say we would need to be in that $6 million range. But, you know, if we're going to be consistent and we're using a sales analysis, we should probably be somewhere down here. And that my recommendation, and in the chart that I put together, I've got the below normal value in that. But either one of those two numbers is what I'm bringing before you when we get to deciding what the value of Century Apartments is going to be. And with that, just a quick run through of how we calculate the income approach. So, Mr. President, I think we're ready to move forward to see if there's any additional information brought before us, or to take action, if you will, on the properties that we tabled.
I think we have worked these properties to more than any other city has worked properties. And are there any questions from commissioners? Mike.
Mr. President, so it looks like the assessed value in 2015 was $12 million, approximately $12 million, and now you're recommending an assessed value 2019 of $5,706,000, which is 53% change. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And just looking at the ones you've listed, it's one of the highest decreases of, I mean, there's a couple of them that are at 53, but I mean, it looks like we have some consistency in the decrease from 2015. I mean, within 4 or 5%, it seems.
And that's what we've tried to do, Commissioner Frederick, is stay consistent to all properties. We always tried to say that, you know, if the market is changing for one, it's probably changing for them all. I think that's a fair assessment, and, you know, that's the action that you've supported me with in the past is, you know, if there's something going on in the market that needs to be adjusted, we're going to do that for all of the property owners, and I think that's only fair and equitable. And it certainly, you know, we're within, you know, a few percent on all of these as we've decreased over the years.
And Mr. Royale, he's looking at what number for 2019 value or 18?
I think he's probably still looking at the appraisal that Joe Ibach had prepared, a value of $3,250,000. In emails, he's mentioned, would be willing to accept $4.8 million. The state was at 5.1 last year. Our market's increased a little bit, not a great amount, but if the state was pretty close and we're going up a little bit, 5.7 certainly isn't out of the realm of possibilities, I don't think, and I believe the information is available to support that.
Well, Mr. President, it looks like Joe has done his homework since the last meeting and so on. I like what Bob Ayler has come up with that to help you with that. It looks like a nice calculation from where we were in 2015 to now. I think that is a fair value, and if you're ready for a vote, I'm ready to offer.
I just want to clarify the list of the property IDs that we have here in this spreadsheet that you've provided us are the current large units that we are going to make an adjustment to. But what we tabled, we just need to address the items we tabled. Am I correct? That were before us, or do we need to go through every one of these and approve each value?
Mr. President, I'll defer to Ms. Murtha if necessary, but I believe with these being an informal process, if you're comfortable with these values, you can certainly make one motion to accept the values brought before you. If there's something that jumps out, we can certainly pull those out individually. One thing I wanted to make sure that I brought to your attention, and that would be on the legal sheet of paper that has the apartments on there, that you see 3 of them that are highlighted in kind of a rose color, if you will. And the direction was kind of using 100 units. The South Park place at the bottom there has 96. There's 3 buildings there. I think that probably fits the letter of what your thoughts were, within reason. I'm comfortable with it. But those Rosa ones, that ownership, they consider those 3 parcels, 8 buildings, as one unit. I mean, they do their books on that, but the way that they were built, they're not contiguous. They could not, we've got them parceled as closely as we can to something that they could sell, but they could sell those 3 individually as we have them, and none of those reach the 100 unit threshold. But 91 gets pretty close, and then you look, well, 84 is not far from 91, but then the other ones are exactly the same. They treat them the same. So I'm deferring to you whether we include all 3 of those, which is 235 units, or what your pleasure is on how we adjust those.
So in your calculation here, did you include them?
They are included
With the extra discount?
with the 10%, yes. Or if you're not comfortable.
Well, that could be sold. In reality, they could sell all 3 of those as one to a prospective buyer.
They could combine those into one group, yes.
I would just jump into what Joe indicated earlier in your question, which was, can you do one motion? I believe what we did at the last meeting, and to clarify, you can do one motion as long as you're clear about the property identification that covers the motion.
Okay. And then we have a separate sheet dealing with the smaller apartments, townhouses from Mr. Clement, some from owner with the last name Berger, the Roar Strip Mall, and that we'll handle that separately than the large items. I do see there's representation here from Mr. Royale. Mr. Bauer, do you have anything to say? The property value right now for Century as listed is $5.7,606,100. It's a reduction of 28%, $47,551 per unit. Have you been provided that information? There's a extra sheet laying there you could possibly get. We understand that Mr. Royale has, we have gotten multiple emails with multiple valuations. The state was at 5.1 last year, $5,129,000. Our current, we're looking at the assessed value of $5,706,100.
Okay. I have a chart, surprisingly. Actually, I have a little packet. If that's okay, can I just pass out? I just want to go over one chart.
Sure.
Okay, thanks. Would be Carlos if we didn't have something.
Trees are screaming.
There's an extra one if they need one.
Cut down any trees in North Dakota. Sure. The only chart I want to bring up to your, my name's Dave Bauer, Bauer Property Management. I'm representing Carlos Royal. Is Joe just made a comment in my notes about how the market is kind of going up, okay? So we did some research through the website, and the chart's called Definitely Targeting. And you can see that there's 37 properties here, and out of those 37, 30 of them received decreases, 7 received increases. And the 7 are highlighted by the red. And the only common denominator between the ones that are listed in red is the fact that they were the ones who were successfully challenged the valuation from the city assessor, either through the state Board of Equalization or through the county Board of Equalization. So I appreciate the sheet going down to 5.706, 100 per first century. I think that's right, yeah, if I'm reading that right. So, I mean, obviously that's nice, but by the same token, the market as a whole has gone down quite a bit, and the original assessment for Century was 6.952,700. So, I just thought it'd be interesting for you guys to see that.
Well, the only comment I'll make
Sure.
is I understand that we can produce this chart and say that we're targeting certain individuals, but we're using the state value, not our value from last year. We're using the state value. This is what was given by the state. It wasn't our original value last year.
Right.
Okay, this is what the state determined they thought was fit. And the state can come back and do whatever they want again this year. But if you would plug in the values that we had before the state got a hold of them, we're not targeting anybody. We're staying consistent with our values. Now, if you want to plug in what state values are, great.
That's what we did. These.
Right, and you plugged in state values.
Right.
But if you plug in our values that we had last year, we didn't target anybody. We've never targeted anybody. I think Mr. Hirschfeld has been very consistent. The state can come up with whatever values they deem are appropriate.
Right.
And we have to adhere to that.
I understand. It's just interesting that the state valued it, and I don't want to get into an argument.
Right.
The state valued it at $5.129 million last year, 2018. Assessed 2019 is $6.9 million.
Right. But if you put in our value last year, what we assessed it at, if I'm correct, our 2018 value was 7.8.
You know,
Right.
Mr. Bauer, Mr. Royal's been here, and I have probably 6,000 emails from him in the past year. I mean, his thing is every time, spot checks. We need to spot check the assessor. We need to spot check the assessor. This commission spent $30,000 to hire a spot checker, mainly because of Mr. Royal's push. And we brought in Vanguard because we wanted to know, were we right? Are we wrong?
Sure.
We did that. Mr. Ayler came in, spent a month or whatever he was here. We went all over these values. He went over them again after the last BOE meeting with Mr. Hirschfeld. I think we've done our due diligence. I think we have a good, strong number here. I mean, unfortunately, Mr. Royal, I'm sure, is not going to be happy again. But at some point, I just don't know what else we can do for him. I think this commission has done everything they can to be as accurate as possible. And if you look at this chart, and we're consistent with everybody
Sure.
since 2012.
Yep.
We're not picking on anybody. I think I'm totally comfortable with these numbers. I don't know what the rest of the commission thinks, but I think the proof is in the pudding there that we've done our job. I don't know what more we can do. If he wants to appeal it to the state and the state comes back again and says that we were wrong, I guess then that's going to have to happen. But until then, I just don't know that there's anything more this city can do to make him happy.
I'm also comfortable with the numbers presented on this spreadsheet for us. So, do you have anything else, Mr. Bauer?
I don't at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I guess, any questions for Mr. Bauer from commissioners? No. All right, thank you. I should ask before you took off. Before we move on to the other properties, the small townhouses and the empty acres, let's deal with this one. Let's go through, and for the public record, let's go through each property ID and identify the new totals. So I would just look for motions from
Mr. President,
Mr. Steiner.
and I ask our attorney if I can say I move we approve 1160-0100-0101, and can I also just go on down the line? Yes. Okay. And approve 250001000200, approve 1631-0500-1100, approve 1678-0100, 0100, approve 1674-0100-0100, approve 1673-0300-0100, approve 8021-0200-0200, approve 1168-0200-0100, approve 1188-0300-0100, approve 1189-0700-0100, approve 1189-0500-0100, approve 1189-0400-0100/0101, and approve 1835-0100-0100.
We have a motion to approve the identified properties, which are large apartment complexes in the city of Dickinson, to approve these numbers as adjusted by our city assessor.
Second.
With a second. Any further discussion or questions on any of these properties? Can we get my only request would be that this table be provided to, on our website and to the media so they can publish it, our adjustments.
Mr. President, we'll make sure that's available to them.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion to approve with a second. Any further discussion or questions, comments? Now we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries on large apartment adjustments. Next item up, Mr. Hirschfeld, is we have some smaller apartments and some townhouses owned by Mr. Clement. Would you like Mr. Clement to come forward first, or do you have, I know you have some, you provided us with some commentary here in our packets. Do you have any additional commentary?
I do not have anything to provide other than what's in the packet. I can certainly state that for the record if you like, or for Mr. Clement.
Mr. Clement, do
Before he
you
comes up,
wish
or-
to approach, or?
Terry Clement, morning board. I guess I just, I thought that 1589, 1527 ought to stay where the state put them, but I don't know what Jill came up with.
I think Mr. Clement, the value from the State Board of Equalization was $952,000. Our 2018 valuation was $1.1 million, and the 2019 valuation is $1,042,000. So it's about $70,000 difference between the State Board and our 2019 valuations. And Mr. Hirschfeld is recommending no change for either Abode or Timely or any of your other properties. So Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Clement or Mr. Hirschfeld on these properties? And there is some narrative provided by Mr. Hirschfeld on.
So you're saying that he had 1527 Abode, 70-some thousand difference, you said?
It's the valuation difference. The State Board is $952,100.
Okay.
That was last year's value.
Right.
This year's value from the city of Dickinson is $1,042,000.
Yeah.
It's more than
About 90,000.
90,000, excuse me, yes. 90,000 difference. And it's a decrease from our valuation last year was $1,161,100. So it's a decrease of about $119,000 from last year. But it is higher than the State Board. So, any comments from Commissioners on these properties? And they did find a difference. If you read the narrative in here, the one has 17 two-bedrooms and one bedroom, and the other one has 17 two-bedrooms and 7 one-bedrooms. So one has 18 unit and one has 24.
Right.
And there's a difference in square footage too. Any questions or comments for Mr. Clement?
Well, 1589 went up from the state, 141,000. Seemed like condition hasn't changed and the rents haven't changed, so.
You're talking Temely?
Yeah, Tim.
We have Mr. Hirschfeld, on the original sheet that I brought with me, we have 855,500, and on this sheet, this new sheet you provided us with, you have 839,100.
Mr. President, Commissioners, thank you. So we do have a little bit of a change there. I apologize for that. What we noticed with that property was kind of like Century. It's got a little bit of a triangle in one corner that's got some excess space that's not being used, carrying full value. So we reduced a little bit of the land value off of that. Looking at roughly $1,000 a unit decrease is what that ended up being. Just gives a little bit of obsolescence to land that's not very usable, but was carrying full value.
So, what does that one actually change, Mr. Decker? I don't have that original sheet with me.
It went down 16,000 roughly. Am I correct, Mr. Hirschfeld?
That is correct, Mr. President.
So it went down $16,000.
So what's that one at now?
839,100.
Oh.
And it was where?
It was at 855,500, and the state last year was at 713. And they Abode, the state was at 952 last year, and we are sitting at 1,042,000 this year. So, Commissioners, I guess I would look for if you want to adjust these numbers, or we have the option. We can go with Mr. Hirschfeld. Mr. Clement is requesting that we just stay with the state. Am I correct, Mr. Clement? That was the original request?
Yes.
Stay with the state numbers. And we have our third option, and we can set a value that we think is either, that is equitable. Like I said, we have three options.
Mr. President,
Mr. Steiner?
on the Abode apartments, we're $90,000 difference. I would be okay with splitting that 45,000, taking the 2019 value from a 1,042,000 down to 997,000. I would recommend that we leave Tamili Apartments as is.
At 839?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion to reduce Abode to 997,000 and leave the Tamale at 839,100.
Second.
With a second. Any further discussion or questions? The motion as stands is parcel ID 1140-0600-2601, Abode Apartments, be reduced to $997,000, and Tamale Apartments stay at the current value of $839,100. Any further discussion or questions on this motion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Mr. Hirschfeld, the other apartments or the townhouses here that you have listed from Mr. Clement, those are, were they originally, I don't see them on the other properties, or were they listed as one? Are these townhouses Jewel Blue and TMJ?
Mr. President, they are not. They came to us unknown before for Mr. Clement. He brought those at the last Board of Equalization meeting. They are the Pheasant Run, I believe, are for
Okay.
those townhouses, and Mr. Clement was concerned why the increase for those properties, if the market was remaining relatively stable or going down. What it first caused that change, and I want to apologize. I had looked at the wrong column when I sent the information out saying that those were at a lower value. That was the 2018 value versus the 2019 value. I think when I said that they were below that sale price. But irregardless, they were 8 townhouses that were considered one property. And so economies of scale, they're worth less as 8 units, selling 8 units together as it would be if you sold them individually. And Mr. Clement had asked that those properties be split so they could be sold individually. So that's what happened in 2018. That value then, they were split. And then when one of the properties sold, as we tried to get out into every sale as part of our revaluation effort, we got into this property that sold. That's the one that's highlighted there, and it's just there for informational purposes. There were some changes noted in that property that would be similar, basically a quality adjustment change. Then upon inspection of that property, that was made for consistency purposes to the others, and that's why we had the increase of, I believe, roughly $14,000 as a check. That property sold in 2017 for $142,000. The bulk of those are at $144,000, so we're within a couple percent. And then the end units are both valued a little higher. I didn't look at it very closely. They may be a little larger, but more than likely they've got a larger lot, means they have the end lots, and that's why their value is, those two are a little higher, the 1300 parcel and the 1307.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Hirschfeld on these properties?
What were these in 2018, the value?
I don't have.
What was the value in 2018, Mr.
I believe it was 131 or 2,000.
131.4.
$131.4, Mr. Clement, is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
131.4, yeah, they've been split for a while, though. I mean, they didn't just get split.
And what's your,
But I think like Joe said, the only one that was sold over there was 142,000. Is that correct? I don't
That's what we
recall.
have as
In
a list.
2017, yes.
Yeah, 142. So they were split in in 2017 to sell one, so.
And what value are you looking for, Mr. Clement?
Well, I couldn't see that they'd, jumped up $13,000, but
It's tough to argue.
I suppose they should be at
It's tough to argue that
142
when you
if
got a
one
sale
sold at
out there at
142.
142. That's,
yeah.
at 144.
I just, this discussion's very indicative of how the assessment lags behind, what's going on in the market. When we're sitting here February, May now of 2019, but, when a property split and then when one sells and you do that and, the assessment's a year behind, we're talking about something that occurred 2 or 3 years ago, now in the present tense. So, and I appreciate Mr. Clement's question on that. I mean, it was a valid question. We just hadn't had a chance to discuss that prior to the last Board of Equalization meeting.
There hasn't been any other sales of nearby properties? I think there's some units on Second that have sold, haven't they, that are similar?
There could be. We didn't get a chance to really look at that and do an individual property analysis, if you will, and see what other sales were. We just looking at total sales, and when we adjust them in, we're right at 100% on all townhouses, and some are going to be a little high and some a little low when you use the median. And we were very close on most of these. And
There are no further questions from commissioners for Mr. Hirschfeld or Mr. Clement. I'd look for a motion on these properties.
Mr. President, I move we leave the values as recommended by Mr. Hirschfeld.
You want to leave okay, so we have a motion to leave 1140-2900-1301, 1140-2900-1302, 1140-2900-1303, 1140-2900-1304, 1140-2900-1305, 1140-2900-1306, and 1140-2900-1307 at the assessed value presented by the city assessor.
Correct.
I have a question, sorry.
Oh,
Parcel ID different than what we have previously? 1670 at the beginning, and then on the new spreadsheet, it's 1140.
Pheasant Run.
Right by your thumb.
Right.
And that is probably an accurate statement. I may have got the wrong subdivision code in here. I believe 1670 is states first. So we would have to amend that 1140 to 1670.
Yeah, those are all wrong. So,
Is the 2900, 1307, right? Just the first number's wrong?
It's just the first four?
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Waller. That is,
Yes, thank you very much.
so,
So even the two we've already approved are incorrect then too, I would guess.
or do the 1140s just carry over?
No, the Abode and Temley are 1140.
Oh, they are, okay.
And I must have just got happy with 1140 when I went and typed the rest of those in.
So we need to start over on,
The last 8 numbers are correct, just the first 4.
Right. so these are all parcel ID 1670s. We need, trying to remember the rules here to rescind this original motion.
The original motion, it's has to be made by the original motion maker, and the motion to rescind has to be seconded by the original person who seconded.
That's what I thought. So, Mr. Steiner, would you like to
I move that we
rescind?
rescind the original motion.
Mr. Steiner has rescinded his original motion of no changes for the property that we have listed because they have a inaccurate parcel ID.
Was there a second?
No, there hasn't been a second.
Oh, second.
Well,
Okay.
no, the,
We didn't have a second.
We didn't have a
on
second to the
original.
original motion, so
Right.
does it just fail then?
Yeah.
The
Okay.
ori- So then we don't need to rescind.
Okay,
it.
we don't need to
Okay.
rescind. So then, let's begin this again. Mr. Steiner, do you have a motion on these properties?
I move we approve all at recommended value by Mr. Hirschfeld.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the recommended values on the townhouse listed as parcel ID 1670-2900-1301, 1670-2900-1302, 1670-2900-1303, 1670-2900-1304, 1670-2900-1305, and 1670-2900-1306, and 1670-2900-1307. With a second. Any further discussion or questions, comments on this motion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you, Mr. Clement. Next item up is the strip mall and out at Rohr's addition. There has been an adjustment. Mr. Hirschfeld has looked at that property. The original assessed value was $5,344,400. After his review of the parcel and a 40% obsolescence applied to the property due to construction being incomplete, the new assessed value is $3.4 million, or $3,456,300. Is there a representative from Rohr's here? There's no one from Rohr's. Mr. Hirschfeld, you have any commentary on this adjustment?
Mr. President. Mr. President, Commissioners, thank you. No, just to just restate what you had there, we're still showing a 40% obsolescence as it isn't completely built out. There's some units there that have an earthen floor, looking to where they put a roof in as they build a suite. With Mr. Ayler assisting me on this, we looked at the vacancy on that. His recommendation was to give 50% of what the vacancy is because there's still value in the structure as it's there, but to reduce that somewhat for what's not being used. So we were, with the 40% that we had on it already, we're putting a heavy amount of obsolescence on this property, but it is what the market is currently. And we did get information back from the Rohr's group on that, and they were 25% occupied. And so we gave 50% of that 75%, or 38% obsolescence for economic on the structure. And because the land is carrying so much value as well, the land value, we've deemed to be accurate. However, with that large amount of value and with the obsolescence, we applied that same factor to the land as well. And as that property continues to build out and to gain occupancy, we can remove that obsolescence until at some point that property is at full value. And with those changes, we did, as Mr. President stated, come to $3,456,300. Take any questions if you have any.
Any questions for Mr. Hirschfeld? Hearing no questions, I'd look for a motion on this Rohr strip mall.
Mr. President,
Mr. Frederick,
I'd make a motion to approve the new value on 2505-0400-0600, the Aurora Strip Mall, to $3,456,300.
we have a motion to approve a new assessed value with a second. Any further discussion, questions, or comments on this new assessed value? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. on the Roar Strip Mall. We have vacant lots. The vacant lots, there is some commentary here, and there are some adjustments. There has been a recommended change to 2 parcels of land that would be deemed as ag value because of their non-development. Are there any questions for Mr. Hirschfeld on any of these valuations?
I guess just you want to just touch on the 2 parcels? I'm not sure. Be 2610-1500-0100 and 2610-1500-0200. Not sure what the 11,200 and 8,000.
Mr. President, Commissioner Frederick, I certainly can. And when it comes to vacant land, the state is very clear on this. Well, clear as mud, if you will. But I'll reference North Dakota Century Code 57-02-01, Section 1. And for classes of real property under item D, property platted on or after March 30th, 1981 is not considered to be ag property when any 4 of the following 7 conditions exist. And these are the guidelines that I kind of look at. The land is platted by the owner. Public improvements include sewer, water, or streets are in place. Topsoil is removed or topography is disturbed to the extent that the property cannot be used to raise crops or graze farm animals. Property is zoned other than agriculture. Property has assumed an urban atmosphere because of adjacent residential or commercial development on 3 or more sides. The parcel is less than 10 acres and not contiguous to agricultural property. And the property sells for more than 4 times the county average true and full ag value. So when we place those 7 considerations on each of these vacant lots, what we found was 2610-1500-0100 and 2610-1500-0200 really only meet 3 of those 7 criteria, and so they are eligible to be considered as ag land because they are larger than 10 acres. And so an ag land value of $750 an acre was placed back on those properties. And that's a tremendous difference, and that's what we saw when the Roar's representative was here at the last meeting with asking for such a large decrease in value. But the rest of those properties fit 4 or more of those criteria and then are not eligible then. And that's why we're recommending no change to those. I also want to point out they're carrying 65% obsolescence. If you remember from the improved properties, we gave 50% for vacancy. That original 50% vacancy was placed on these. It was assumed it was going to take longer for these to sell because they weren't improved. And then additional obsolescence given because there were no improvements in place. One can argue if 65% is adequate, if it needs to be more, you know, that is going to be an argument, I guess, for another day without representation here. But that's how we arrived at the values we have before you.
Thank you, Mr. Hirschfeld. Any other questions for Mr. Hirschfeld on these properties? Now I'd look for a motion on the vacant lots owned by Roars.
Mr. President, I move we approve recommended values of Mr. Hirschfeld. Vacant lots 2610-0500-0100, 2610-1500-0100, 2610-1500-0200, and then the following 8 are 2610-0400-0100, 0200, 0300, 0400, 0500, 0600, 0700, 0800, 0900, and 1000. Approved 2610-0500-0200, approved 2610-0600-0100, and approved 2610-14-1800.
We have a motion to approve the values as presented to us from the city assessor.
Second.
For the second. Any further questions, comments on this motion, on these values? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries on the vacant lots owned by Roars. Do we have any other properties, Mr. Hirschfeld?
Mr. President, I do not believe there are any other properties. I'm sure be willing to stand corrected if we missed something from the last meeting, though.
Are there any other properties that anyone wishes to present that we have not addressed in this continuation? The board has proceeded to equalize and correct the assessment roll. The board has changed the valuation. The assessment is real property upon the roll and within reasonable and just to render taxation uniform according to North Dakota Century Code 57-11-03. There will be no reduction after this session of the board, after the adjournment. So if there is any other properties people wish to bring forward, they need to bring them forward at this present time. I'd look for a motion to approve the assessor's report with the assessed value of all property classes.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the assessor's report with of all property classes.
Second.
With a second. Any further discussion, questions on this motion? Now we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Since there is nothing remaining on the agenda, Mr. Hirschfeld, any comments, questions, additional information?
Mr. President, nothing further for today. We'll take these changes, finalize those, and I'll have an updated valuation report for you the next meeting or two here.
Okay. And these values get presented to Stark County at what time?
Typically, that date is the second or the first Tuesday in June.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hirschfeld. Anything else from staff? Not, I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
We are adjourned.